You might not know this, but the world is teeming with life. What goes on in the body? There's something special about
growing, and
this particular.
the mind has endless capabilities.
There's a lot of
Heavy metals interrupt
their DNA.
ATP synthase.
ATP. Okay, there's
Just
the cell
imagine
wall.
the small. We can learn so much about our ancestors. Reading,
And I think we're moving more and
it's a
more.
new type
The
of
entire
body.
More of this. What are they teaching?
Bunch
here?
of systems.
There are
DNA
worlds that we haven't even
DNA polymerase III.
seen yet. Why does
All in a drop of water.
doctors know
The
a lot?
universities
There's more in our bodies that we don't know about than we do.
Welcome back to Beyond Being Well. I'm Cy Szynski.
And I'm Dr. Ryan Keegan. Just want to say I'm not a doctor.
Yes. And before we get into things, I have a huge announcement, actually.
Oh, you do? Because I have a huge announcement as well. And, I'm feeling...
Well, before you get into whatever you're going to say, I think maybe, could we say what our announcements are at the same time? Would that not be strange? Would that be interesting?
I mean, I think the audience wants to, hear from one of us more than the other, but we could do that.
No, but I think whoever's more important might come forward in that statement. You hear what you want to hear. Am I right?
I like that.
All right. So why don't we do a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then we'll both say our announcements.
3, 2, 1. I don't have Lyme anymore.
What?
I don't have Lyme anymore. What'd you say?
I said I did not have Lyme's disease.
Oh, you have Lyme?
Yes. You no longer have it?
No, and I never had it.
Really?
Yeah, and we'll get into that today. Wait, you're saying you do have Lyme?
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe I was outside and a tick made its way into my system.
When were you outside?
I don't know.
You don't get out that much.
No, I do, actually. You don't really know what my habits are. And
I didn't actually ever have it.
Right. Well,
I was sort of cured of the ailment, but really never actually had it is what I found out. And that was actually from the retreat that I was on. And, we can get into that.
Okay, so
that's what this episode is about.
A mental ailment that wasn't really real?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. Well, mine's real.
That's not very unfortunate that you got that.
All right, I guess we get into things.
Yeah, so as you may have heard, audience members, from that little discussion, that I went on a retreat, came back, and life-changing experience for me. And, the guide, sort of the leader of the retreat, I really connected with him. And I asked him to come on the show. And he's come on the show. His name is Dove White. He's a corporate shaman, a speaker, an inspirer, a cultural conduit, a social empath, and blogger on a blog called CEOM.
Oh, that's so clever.
Multifaceted person, and I think he should just go ahead and introduce himself.
Yeah, hey, so I'm Dove White, and I definitely agree with that multifaceted comment. I could see that in myself. I think I should start by talking about the retreat that Ryan and I went on. Well, actually, I spearheaded it, but
Sure.
Ryan participated.
Of course.
In it. So, Cy, you're in LA, right?
Yeah.
You're familiar with Joshua Tree? It's a little east.
Right. Yes, of course.
It's not necessarily it's not a city per se, but it's like a park. It's a very large park.
Right.
Let me first explain the name of the retreat. It's called the ACI Retreat, and that stands for Ample Core Initiative Retreat. So Ample Core Initiative is the name of my spiritual advisory firm, where I have consultants there. I call them thought conduits. They're slightly lower than me in the totem pole, but it's a microdosing seminar, essentially, where microdosing is key.
Yeah.
Super key.
But then there's also meditation and poetry.
So thought conduit, maybe you can get into that for a second. What is a thought? Who is a thought conduit?
Yeah, for sure. So are you familiar with the phrase of thinking outside the box?
Yes.
Right. So what that phrase never specifies is, where outside of the box are you thinking? Are you thinking to the left? Are you thinking to the right, in front?
Yeah, and is the box 3-dimensional or is it 2-dimensional?
That's a good point. But what thought conduits do is we think above the box.
Right.
And we channel from years and years of spirits and ancestors and energy.
But you're kind of looking down on the box. You have like a great view of the box.
Right. Usually people, when they're inside the box, they can't see the top of it because they're inside of it.
So you gather these thought conduits like yourself, and you're dispensing this information to CEOs.
Well, yeah, you were there. You saw the information I was giving to one CEO. It was a hemp clothing line. He was looking for advice on how to infuse the clothing with the hemp. He had the idea of clothing. He had the idea of hemp. But where do the two come together? That was the struggle. And we wrote some poems about hemp and clothing. And he eventually wrote a poem that is now his manifesto, you could say. It's the business model.
I like that. That's pretty interesting.
Well, we discourage the people who participate from thinking of themselves as customers or novices. We prefer the term curious learner. Usually there's 15 curious learners who make it to be accepted into the seminar. So $5,000 is actually the entrance fee to even be considered.
It's almost like a university process.
Exactly. Think about it as like quick university. University. Imagine college, but more drugs.
And more knowledge.
Yeah.
We are not fans of anything university.
Yeah, I mean, I also believe that life is school.
Oh, that's a hat right there.
No, that's one we need to put on our website.
Life is school.
We're sort of brainstorming new merch ideas.
Yeah.
And the way that we like encourage microdosing there is so that it becomes like a permanent part of you. So that even after you leave the seminar and you pursue other optimal creative endeavors, I hate to be crude, but it's as if everything you come up with, it's like you can only be stoned to come up with it.
It's cliche, but it's true.
Right.
We're finding.
It's like the jokes you'll make, the poetry you'll write.
The computer mouse was created by a guy who was on LSD, so you can't go much further than that.
I mean, and it's called a mouse after all. It's not even a mouse.
Yeah, imagine what he was seeing. He probably looked at it and thought he actually saw an actual mouse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I signed up for it, paid a small fee of $5,000, and then
I was going to ask.
Yeah, so then I took a little trip. It was actually a bus that set up in LA, and then we went to Joshua Tree. From there, we removed all of our belongings and given these, white tunics and slippers, but slippers that covered the outside. The bare foot was actually exposed.
And that's a part of grounding.
Yeah, we talked about that in our first episode.
Yeah,
just getting in touch with the earth. Yeah, so then we were given our mats, which is key. For each person, you get a different shape and color mat, and that's where your meditation is done. So mine was a triangular purple mat made out of rubber. That's where I sat for hours on end.
And you get to take those home?
Yeah, I have mine.
Awesome.
We can get into this later, but I actually ended up writing a poem, and that's what sort of helped me get over this Lyme mental ailment that I had. And Dove actually guided me through that
line by
process. I didn't even know I had a mental ailment.
I didn't. Yeah, you said you didn't even know you could write a poem.
So all it took was the poem?
And the microdosing meditation, but the poem was sort of at the end of that process.
Yeah. Okay.
It was about what wasn't in the poem.
Have you ever written a poem, Sai?
Yeah.
Sai, if you ever need help with your poetry, you could come to the next seminar next year.
That's
really advise it.
No, it's private. It's sort of something I do on the side.
No, I think the main thing about poetry is letting other people read it.
Not for mine, but interesting opinion.
Well, you should listen to
get over your line.
I will.
His is real though.
Yeah, so mine's real, so it's kind of a different wheelhouse that we're dealing with.
Okay.
So Dove, I want to get into your blog. It's called See Om, and that's a genius play on words you have there.
Thank you.
And reading your blog, it's very interesting. Zen, meditation. It's not really a business thing. You wouldn't associate it.
Historically, it was a business practice.
Oh, really?
We love history as much as we love science. So
yes.
Let's kind of go into that realm.
Mm-hmm. Zen began in China as it was a mercantile method for making trade easier. If there was an argument, people would just join hands and take a deep breath.
We've gotten away from it, and why do you think that is?
It's just how our society is.
It's sad.
It's sad. I'm trying to bring it back, though. Did I say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
My most recent blog post is how to channel animism for your company. As you know, I'm a corporate shaman,
Right.
and the main thing that shamans do is they practice animism. That is finding life in everything, and namely societal structures. So what is the soul of a structure? Should I read off the first 3 steps?
Please do.
Please do.
I think I'll start with number 1. That's usually a good place to start.
Usually.
So number 1 is to summon animism. You must bond with your customers. Customers are fickle. You can never trust them. So you're in charge of putting their spirits on a leash, per se. You have to put your customers on a leash.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is that you only have power over your workers, not over your customers, aside from putting a leash on them.
So what's being used for your workers, if not a leash?
Number 3, company culture should be measured in spiritual units.
So
Spiritual units?
Yes,
can you explain what that looks like?
a spiritual unit.
I'm having a little bit of trouble. I mean, maybe this is the nature of it being spiritual. How does one earn a spiritual unit?
Every company needs a recreation room, right? And everyone deserves at most a half-hour break during the day. At most a half hour. Beyond that gets tricky.
So that's a spiritual unit. That's one unit.
Yes.
So recreation is a unit.
Recreation in moderation.
Okay.
So are these organized? So a unit is a slice of time devoted to one thing in the office place?
A unit is how serious you are to open yourself up.
Interesting. So you're sort of accumulating units by the nature of your enthusiasm?
Yes. No, yes.
Okay. So in terms of the spiritual units, is that something that comes into play when when we're talking about employees and where they may lay in the structure that is the business model?
Yes. So in the business hierarchy, each level of the hierarchy, each person in that level has their own inherent amount of spiritual units that they can never gain more of or lose. What they can only do is improve the units. The way I look at the corporate hierarchy is that it mirrors Maslow.
Right.
Mirrors Maslow.
The hierarchy of needs?
Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
Yeah, I just said that.
I was saying it as well.
Well, you're both right. And we need stability in the hierarchy. So if there's upward mobility, that'll disrupt the entire hierarchy. Executives have to stay on the top and CEOs at the top. And their positions are determined by, spiritual analysis in the first place. CEO isn't just a CEO out of anywhere. An executive isn't just an executive out of anywhere. It's because of this ineffable genius that they have. And that ineffable genius can be measured in their spiritual
units. Right.
Yes.
Okay, I'm starting to grasp this, but my question is, how does someone earn a position then if their spiritual units are sort of already what they have based on who they are?
So only people on lower rungs have to prove themselves, and the way that they can prove themselves and secure their position at a company is through practicing what I like to call upward suffering.
Upward suffering?
Upward suffering. It's how willing you are to work long hours, for the organization, for the spirit of the company, and to spend your breaks meditating, spending your half-hour break. So how much are you willing to suffer for the upward momentum of the company?
So this is
That's super interesting.
This feels very much that spirituality is integral to
Work
business.
ethic.
Well, yes, and work ethic, but also business. Whereas, before we weren't really seeing that, and we were saying that, we've kind of gotten away from that. But you're saying that it's always been the case, and that these business models have been around for centuries.
That's true. Hierarchy is natural. If people are on the bottom, that's usually on them. That's due to some sort of spiritual deficiency. But now finally I'm showing that if we look through the lens of Zen, this makes perfect sense. We've been following the natural order all along. When I hear things about labor unions or that sort of thing, that usually is kind of going against what's organic. There's something very spiritually depleting about unions, I feel, because it takes the emphasis away from the individual growth and depends on some like collective mobility.
It's synthetic.
It's kind of like, I only have 2 units, but these other people have 5, and I want to get as many units as I can, but not from my own. So
It's artificial gathering of units.
Right. So through this light, you can see like how selfish really labor unions are, because they're not taking into account how the people above them have a higher spiritual, emotional bandwidth, you can say.
Mm.
Labor unions are not able to make Zen critical inquiries.
So Dub, on the retreat, you said I had, around 18 spiritual units. I was like wondering, like, is that a lot, or?
The only way to increase units is by going on these sort of special seminars. You're actually at 20 right now. I forgot to tell you.
20 units now?
Yeah, you rose.
So a lot or a little? So how many units do you have?
Oh, I've lost track at around 150.
Yeah, and so just by judging me, like, how many unit kind of guy am I?
Well,
He hasn't been on many retreats at all, I don't think.
and
No,
how
but
many poems have you written?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that.
You could estimate. How many poems have you written?
Maybe 1,000?
Not enough.
Really?
Not enough. I'm going to say you're at a 2.
Well, what if I was sort of tinkering always with those single 1,000 ones?
Let's say a 7 at best, but I would say you're mainly a 2. You're scum.
But I can sort of earn them in a very organic way, right?
The most organic way is by coming to my seminars and enlisting in one of the companies that I advise. You could come into my consultation firm, which Ryan, I really encourage you to apply. You should. Promise.
I have almost finished the application.
Oh,
I'd
man.
love a copy of one of those because I'd
Well,
like to get my hands dirty with that.
Well, Sai, we have a janitor's position open, so you'll definitely be getting your hands dirty.
You know what? I actually can't do that right now because I'm still sort of in this process of getting my own company going. Actually.
Well, it failed. Maybe that speaks
Not
to where he sort of belongs in the hierarchy. What can you say about that?
No.
At this point, he's definitely a 2, so he's definitely close to the bottom. He seems
7, you said.
At best. I was just egging you on in case you were going to join one of my companies. But since you're so adamant to not join and go on this little T whim,
No.
you're inside the box. But if you listen closely, Ryan's on top.
We don't have boxes at our company, so
Listen closely. You could hear Ryan jumping higher and higher. Soon he'll be levitating.
bro.
I can sort of see the box from the top.
Okay.
Yeah, and you'll see your co-host your scum co-host lying at the bottom of the mental box. Because that's where he's trapped.
Guys, this is something that you must admit is that I have actually more space for upward suffering, and I can actually get to that point. And whereas you guys, you fell into, you have the spiritual units. Basically, it's an opportunity for me, right?
Upward suffering?
It's an opportunity for me to get more spiritual units and become, closer to, a higher power.
It's more than an opportunity. The way you're defining it, it's more than an opportunity. It's about
see, there we go.
It's about stoicism. It's about being able to persist. It's about being rock hard.
Yeah, and
fumbling through life.
Yeah,
actually, no, hold on. Ryan wrote another poem about it. He was showing to me before the podcast in our little group chat. Just the two of us.
You're really good friends, seems like.
Yeah.
The more spiritual units you have with someone, the closer you are socially.
Yeah, so Dov and I actually, some of our units are actually shared. Sort of like a covalent bond of a unit.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of our interactions we've had with each other. But back to that poem, this one was actually not words at all. It was, just completely a shape that formed from my psilocybin, and
it was visceral. It was visceral, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a lot like a poem.
Yeah, it was a poem, and it was a shape.
I'm saying it doesn't.
Huh?
It doesn't sound like a poem to me. It sounds like a made-up thing that you're making.
He hasn't begun reciting it yet. What would you do?
He's going to recite a shape? Awesome.
Well, guys, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I would say, Ryan, let's hold off on reciting the poem. And
Okay.
maybe Sai, you interpreted this as ganging up, but Ryan interpreted it as collaborating. Us collaborating to critique you could be costing us some spiritual units. I would say not me so much. Once you pass the 130 threshold, you're permanent in the spiritual units. But I think, Ryan, I might be jeopardizing your amount by like kind of encouraging this critique
You hear that?
of your co-host, I would say. So
Yeah.
let's hold off on the poem, because otherwise it'll lose all meaning if it comes out of his mouth.
I don't think it would be good for my units anyway.
Doesn't sound like it. You could even try to repeat it if it's not words.
Hold on. Don't try to sneak in those little jabs. You're at a 1.5 right now.
And you don't want to go into negative units.
What happens if you go into negative units?
You're fired.
Right. Okay. Well, I don't work for you, so I don't understand that.
It's metaphor.
Yeah. So maybe this is time to get towards the end here. We don't need this arguing. You know.
Yeah, but there's something to be gained from it in the form of a lesson, I think. That's a great place to end it. Thank you so much, Dove White, and thank you personally for the amazing experience you afforded me.
And this has been Beyond Being Well.
And this has been Beyond Pleasurable.
I'm Sai Szynski.
And I'm Dr. Ryan Keegan.
And I'm Dove White.
And he's Dove White. Thanks for listening.